Hello and welcome to the Kopala TV main news. We go straight into the headlines. Millers Association of Zambia predicts a reduction in meal prices. YWCA supports adoption of women in politics. NAREP urges government to stop treating foreigners as number one. Sudan gold and fuel smuggling costing hundreds of millions annually. Join us in a bit after this. To present the Kopala TV main news, my name is Monze Mwinga. Millers Association of Zambia, MAZ, has predicted a reduction in meal prices days after the government announced the prospected bumper harvest. Details are in the following report.
It is a situation that has pleased many. The Millers Association of Zambia has predicted a reduction in the prices of meal days after the government announced a prospected bumper harvest of over 3 million metric tons of maize. Millers Association of Zambia President Andrew Chintala noted that the market cost determines the prices of a commodity, adding that the prices of meal will be relatively fair. Mr. Chintala has, however, praised farmers across the country who have produced over 3 million metric tons of maize.
To the small-scale farmers who have produced about 90% of the 3.3 million we are talking about today, I think through their hard work that the country is poised to record a bumper crop. However, notwithstanding the issue to do with the supply and pricing, we are very much arrived to the fact that what determines the price of the commodity is the market forces in this case. So we are anticipating that the price of maize will remain relatively fair, and that being the case, if the prices will be trading within the region as announced by Food Reserve Agency, I can confidently confirm to you that indeed we expect a reduced stable prices going forward.
However, Quito residents are delighted to hear this news. The residents had this to say.
It was a very good news and impressive news that the government was able to produce a bumper harvest. I was also excited that we maybe, according to what we have been going through over the meal prices, maybe we expect the meal prices to drop, especially here on the Copper Belt.
Atitwatemwa babweshako ubunga bantu kuli fwe bashire bomba kiriko cyashupa tatulekwanisha.
Meanwhile, the Food Reserve Agency FRA has announced that a 50-kilogram bag of maize will be selling at 110 kwacha. Victoria Mukpo reporting for Kopala TV News in Kitwe.
YWCA Copper Belt Regional Coordinator Sharon Chisenga has welcomed the move to encourage the appointment of women into a leadership position. YWCA held a training and mentorship program for women aspiring to take positions in leadership. Details are given in the following report.
With the evolution of the times, women have increasingly been appointed into positions of leadership across the globe. In Africa, one of the countries that has appointed quite a number of women into leading positions, political and others alike, is Rwanda. Zambia's Gender Minister, Honorable Elizabeth Piri, also highlighted that country in her statement which she gave over the weekend. As reported by Lusaka Times, the Gender Minister encouraged political parties to adopt 50% of women in the 2021 general election. She said that women should be given the opportunity to lead, adding that if Rwanda has done it, we can as well. The Young Women's Christian Association YWCA Regional Coordinator Sharon Chisanga has welcomed the statement made by the Gender Minister, saying that some factors that have contributed to a lower percentage of women in politics includes finances.
We've been attending less numbers in the past because of a lot of factors that have been attributing to that. Of course, finances being key. Most of the women are unable to have the finances and finance the process of being adopted. So for me, as YWCA, this is why we've taken it up. I think we are We are ahead of things. We want more women to aspire come the next elections. So as an institution, we've been on the ground speaking, advocating first for the quota systems to be put in each political parties, as mentioned by the minister. Because for us to have these numbers, first, the political parties should have the political will to ensure there's gender balance in terms of, leadership in their own political parties. So after that is done, I think even the advocates that we're trying to run is going to be achieved.
YWCA has also been training aspiring political candidates in the things that they would need and encounter in leadership positions.
As YWCA, we've engaged all the political parties to give us women who will be contesting maybe come the next elections. We want to mentor them, talk them through, train them in the leadership skills so that they know what is it all about a leader. Maybe somebody can be aspiring, but they don't know what it takes to be a leader. So we've been running programs, trainings for the women in leadership so that even they also understand what is it that I should do in order to take up certain decisions.
One of the speakers at the mentorship program was Kafue Ward Councillor Pamela Katebe, who emphasized on the necessity of financial capital and saving up in order to finance one's political endeavors.
If you have money, make sure that 20% you save it for what you want to become. You can only become when you have money, because for example, if your ward is this place, up to Chimwemo. For you to move from Apanokia to Chimwemo, you need transport.
Wabwila Musongole, Kopala TV News in Kitwe.
The opposition political party, Patriots for Economic Progress President Sean Tembo, says that there is no need to cry blue murder about ZESCO wielding its power through CEC transmission and distribution network, because the statutory instrument is not saying that the said service will be free of charge. Mr. Tembo has said that the SI provides for remuneration and will be determined by Energy Regulation Board from time to time. He has, however, said that CEC has acted unreasonably during these times of negotiations because they want to assist on a continuation of the previous arrangement where they bought power at exorbitant prices.
As Patriots for Economic Progress, we hold the view that before we could proceed to cry blue murder about the ZESCO wielding of its power through Copper Belt Energy's transmission and distribution network, we need to remember that the statutory instrument is not saying that the said service will be free of charge. To the contrary, the statutory instrument of last Friday provides for remuneration by ZESCO to Copper Belt Energy Corporation for use of their infrastructure in the transmission and distribution of power in the Copper Belt. Such remuneration will be determined by the Energy Regulation Board from time to time. So in our view, we need to adopt a wait-and-see approach and see what kind of remuneration the Energy Regulation Board will come up with. If such remuneration is reasonable, then there is no need to cry blue murder at all. If the said remuneration is too low, then this statutory instrument will obviously amount to expropriation of private property and can be subjected to a challenge in court. About the entire principle of the statutory instrument, our view is that it is a bittersweet decision by government, because on one hand, it sends a very bad signal to the international community that private property is not safe in Zambia and can be expropriated at any time. And therefore, this would actually have the impact of undermining the flow of foreign direct investment to Zambia. On the other hand, the Copper Belt Energy has acted unreasonably during these negotiations because they want to insist on a continuation of the previous arrangement whereby they bought power from ZESCO at ridiculously low rates and sold that same power at exorbitant prices to the mines, thereby making supernormal profits.
In case you have just joined us, you are watching the Kopala TV main news. Join us after this set of commercials.
Kuna nubutuku bobuncha bobutile mwalifasi wa coronavirus 2019 bobu hasanela mali na hazengata zalifasi sinarubia lisupo nilipona hazo zezibahala linga chwaro kuhodola livelenge kuferero kimoya nikufipelwa hapo hulile utisaka tavi nikusaseveza kwa lipio fokongwe mane ukona kutisa lifu haiba kusala fiwe mutukaufela umwakozi yakuyambula kutukubo virus ye iyambukela katu loteli twamoya totuzwa kwa kuhotola kapa kuitimula kwa mukuli wa butukubo mukana kuyambula butukubo hayaba musutelela mutu yakola butukubo kapa liforoforo nizezwa pa liforoforo kupotela libaka zena ni butukubo kutisakozi yakuyambula kuli museleleze ni kuseleleza na babamwe kutabe kwa mazoho kamulola mezi yakenele kamita kapa kuitusisa miliani ya kutola kwa mazoho mwapehe kubulisa licho zanama ni mayande haiba muna ni virus ye musika muhasanya butuku kakubona kuli mwakwahela kwa mulomo ni kwango ka ngokorwa yeputilwe kapatishu amuhotola kapa kuitimula ni mutape kwa mazoho isali wana 4 haiva mukayeleza kuli mina warupasi lwa mina kapa mutu ufi kapa ufi una ni coronavirus 29 mubateka la 4 isali wana 4 kwa sipatela tesili kupa ufi ni mina titabaze mulifizisizwe kibali kolola makete ni bazidi IPHI katuso yababa sebebisa na nibona
Looking for an opportunity to grow your business? Well, Kopala TV has good news for all small-scale businesses. You can now advertise on Kopala TV's Makwebo. Bonseba na mayo na bashtata. Iseni mulangishe amakwebo yenu pamutengo uachepa nga 100 kwacha. Yes, you heard right. For as low as 100 kwacha, your business will get its peak. Whatever the business, we will advertise. All you need to do is send a text of what your business offers, indicating the name, location, and contact details to the number below. Payment for the advertising spot can be made through MTN mobile money on the number down below. Makwebo, make your business known.
Welcome back. The National Restoration Party, NARE President Stephen Nyirenda has told government to stop treating foreigners as number one and to start protecting local businesses and not those of foreigners. Mr. Nyirenda was speaking after he toured some selected bars and clubs operating in the umbrella of restaurants. He said leaving this issue unattended will not only result in the explosion of COVID-19 infections, but has the potential to knock out local businesses and entrepreneurs whose businesses have remained closed.
I'm very, very shocked. Last night I took a tour in some few shopping malls. I went to East Park Mall. Between 01 and 04, I found that at Chicago's people were drinking, no social distance, jam-packed, and so on and so on. I was shocked. I can't remember any time that the Republican President, Mr. Lungu, did announce to say bars are open. They say they are restaurants. Who is eating at 1 a.m., at 2 a.m., at 3 a.m.? I'm very, very shocked. Last night I took a tour in some few shopping malls. I went to East Park Mall. Between 01 and 04, I found that at Chicago's people were drinking, no social distance, jam-packed, and so on and so on. I was shocked. I can't remember any time that the Republican President, Mr. Lungu, did announce to say bars are open. They say they are restaurants. Who is eating at 1 a.m., at 2 a.m., at 3 a.m.? all these bars, they belong to foreigners. When I went further into certain compounds where I found bars that belong to Zambians, they were closed with the tight security, policemen were all over, but the bars belonging to foreigners, they were open. What is going on? And also, it was also for me a shock. Certain bars which were open in the compounds, like Public Brew, where I thought, well, this is a PF guy. He knows where to touch, he knows what to do.
Still in local news, APC leader Nason Musoni has appealed to members of parliament to reject the Amendment Bill number 10 of 2019. Speaking to Kopala TV Main News, Mr. Musoni emphasized that Bill number 10 is a classic case of abuse of the legislative process and only serves to legitimize illegalities and fraud and does not in any way benefit the Zambian citizenry.
Zambians must reject Bill 10. This is our last line of defense in defense of our democracy. And also, for those who seek to abuse the legislative process, the privilege to legislate, are desperate. This is also their last throw of the dice. We have to defend and protect the democratic space by ensuring that we reject this Bill 10. This Bill 10 serves only to advance individual interest of a few selfish politicians. This is not for Zambians. This will not work for Zambians. So we must unanimously reject Bill 10, and we appeal to our members of parliament to reject this bill. It is more destructive and it's a very expensive document to implement for a country without resources.
And in foreign news, gold and fuel smuggling have been costing resource-rich Sudan hundreds of millions of dollars every year. A new report by financial watchdog group Global Financial Integrity (GFI) has revealed the extent of mismanagement in those sectors and its impact on the economy. We monitored Al Jazeera for this.
Sitting under the sun for hours is how these miners in Solba in South Darfur spend most of their days. They're looking for gold, their main source of income. But not all that is dug up by miners here is sold legally and goes into government coffers.
Gold gets smuggled because of the instability in its prices and lack of control at the border. Difference between prices given by the central bank and what traders offer to buy from miners helps in the smuggling of gold.
Sudan is one of Africa's top gold-producing countries, exporting over 90 tons of the precious metal in 2018. It accounts for nearly 30% of the country's export. And up until the beginning of this year, the only entity allowed to legally buy gold from miners was the country's central bank. But a soaring inflation and a currency that has continued to lose value against the dollar turned many miners away from the official routes and to more lucrative paths. Now, private companies are allowed to deal in the sector with the condition that they sell 30% of their gold to the central bank as well as deposit the hard currency they earn to help Sudan's weakening economy. Revenues from gold mining have provided a much-needed source of hard currency to Sudan's economy for years. But the income's estimated to be only about half of what it should be because of smuggling. With the inflation rate at about 100%, Sudan's government is looking to reform the gold sector to boost its economy. Since taking over in September last year, Sudan's transitional government has pledged a series of economic reforms to combat inflation and improve living standards. More than half of the 40 million population live below the poverty line. The government has increased wages of civil workers and raised spending on public sectors. It says it hopes to partially cover the costs of those reforms through the gold sector. But with millions being lost annually due to smuggling, some analysts say the real reform that the government needs to do should come from within.
The problem with the gold is really smuggling, which is not, done by any scrupulous traders or anybody else, but it has been done by certain circles within the government itself, and by those who are supposed actually to protect gold smuggling, which makes it very difficult when you come to the reform of stopping smuggling, because it's done by those who are supposed to actually stop smuggling.
Whatever steps the government takes, for miners in Solba, the only thing that matters is that they get paid fairly for their efforts to dig up the gold, regardless of who buys it. Hiba Morgan, Al Jazeera, Khartoum.
And in more foreign news, protests over the death of George Floyd in Minneapolis have spread to at least 30 U.S. cities. The African-American man died after being pinned to the ground by a white police officer who kept his knee on the suspect's throat for more than 8 minutes. George Floyd is the latest in a string of African-Americans to die while being arrested or being in custody. There has been violence, looting, and arson in some cities, and several have imposed curfews. President Trump's national security advisor has denied that there is institutional racism in the U.S. police, saying that most officers were heroes. But a lawyer for George Floyd's family accused the police officer who has been charged with killing of premeditated murder. Protests in support of George Floyd have also taken place in other cities around the world, including London. We monitor the BBC for more.
Rita, we've been attending a peaceful protest. It just wound up. It was sort of a moment of Sunday calm in what's been a very turbulent weekend. The National Guard troops were deployed, but they held back or stood back in this case. But over the past 24 hours, security forces have been showing more aggressive tactics in dealing with the protesters. I just want to warn you that there are some distressing images now in the report you're about to see.
Another night of chaos and unrest as anger over police killings spread to every corner of the country. Penetrating the heart of political power in Washington, D.C., security agents used tear gas to push protesters away from the White House. New York's iconic streets were littered with the debris of rage over the death of George Floyd, but also giving vent to years of festering frustration with police mistreatment of African Americans. Here and in more than a dozen other cities, protesters and looters ignored curfews. Security forces rounded them up, fighting to restore order. Nearly a third of the arrests took place in Los Angeles. In Minneapolis, the National Guard moved with military precision to clear demonstrators away from a police station, firing tear gas and rubber bullets, setting up roadblocks throughout the city, shutting down movement.
We're the press! We're media! Security forces have been aggressively pushing back the protesters. They came determined to make sure that this night would be different than the others, to retake the streets. We've seen a real show of force here tonight.
I cannot breathe. You just a grown.
The protests began here after this video went viral. The police officer pressed his knee into the neck of George Floyd and kept it there for more than 8 minutes. He's been charged with third-degree murder. Most here don't support the violence in the demonstrations, but some say without it, their voices aren't heard.
We've been silent for too long. We've been peaceful. How many peaceful protests do we have to have until it gets right? So, yes, I feel like it needed to happen.
There's a point of being policed where we just reach our wits' end, and this is our wits' end.
This is a war, and they're not just stepping back and allowing us to win.
They see this as a pivotal moment in a long struggle for racial justice. But the country is walking a dangerous line between protest and anarchy, confrontation and aggression, battering the space to find answers to the unrest. The Trump administration has called violence at protests domestic terrorism and denied systemic racism in the police force.
There are some bad cops that are racist, and there are cops that are, maybe don't have the right training, and there's some that are just bad cops, and they need to be rooted out because there's a few bad apples that are giving law enforcement a terrible name.
This afternoon, large numbers of National Guard troops deployed to protect the Capitol building in St. Paul, Minnesota.
No justice, no peace.
The protest was peaceful, as so many have been. But not in Philadelphia. The country is entering its second week of social disorder, one of the most turbulent periods it's seen in decades.
Finally, in foreign news, primary schools in England will begin readmitting some pupils this week, despite warnings from unions that it's happening too soon. Parents of nursery and reception years 1 to 6 will be able to choose whether to send their children back to school. During this lockdown, they've only been open to vulnerable children and to those of key workers. Outdoor markets and car showrooms will also be allowed to reopen in England, with safety measures in place as the restrictions of non-essential retailers start to be eased. All other shops classed as non-essential are preparing to open from June 15th. Some scientists have said that they are concerned the lockdown is being lifted too soon and there could be a second serious wave of coronavirus. We monitored the BBC for more on this report.
We've had to think about everything from the moment the parents drop off the children at the gate in the morning.
For weeks, this head teacher has been planning.
So this is the yellow line that we've put down that parents must stay on this side of the line.
Parents and children arriving tomorrow morning will see how much has changed. On the playground, the new normal marked out. Children in new class bubbles of no more than 15.
All our classrooms have doors onto the outside. So
lessons, break time and lunch all in the same group.
Usually we would have 2 tables together and 4 children working on a table. Teachers have made videos of how the children will come into school and what their classrooms now look like, because everything is just a little bit different, but we want to ease that anxiety for parents and children.
Even schools like this that are completely ready to take back nursery, reception, year 1 and year 6 don't expect everyone to turn up on the first day. A lot of it is about personal choice, how parents feel about managing the risks.
Safety comes first, so life and death.
On her doorstep, one mum, Sumaira, told me of her dilemma. Her oldest, Samia, could go back to year 6. But with older relatives at home, Sumaira wants to wait.
I'll talk to the parents, whoever's sending their children, and I'll talk to the teachers, how they're managing and everything, how's everything going on. And if they give me a positive response, then I might think about it. At the moment, it's no.
In this Manchester community, each family making its own decision. Mona wants Banya to go back to finish primary school.
I'm sure that the school are doing what they can and they follow the guidelines. But I want her to meet her friends before transition to high school.
Earlier, one union leader said scientists were backing their call for a delay.
Their concern and our concern is that the case number in the country isn't low enough and that the contact tracing isn't working well enough. So we're risking a spike in communities.
Most other children will still be at home, with a promise of some lessons for year 10 later in June. Bramwyn Jeffries, BBC News.
And that item brings us to the end of the Kopala TV main news, but before we leave, a recap of the headlines. Millers Association predicts a reduction in milli meal prices. YWCA supports adoption of women in politics. NAREP urges government to stop treating foreigners as number 1. Sudan gold and fuel smuggling costing hundreds of millions annually. Thank you for watching the Kopala TV main news. My name is Monza Mwinga. Have a pleasant day.